Hey guys, it's Jess here, and I have a special guest.
Hello, I'm Anne Bouleanu. I'm a journalist.
Anne and I have known each other for quite a few years. We worked together for a couple years.
Yes, we did.
She's my boss lady.
Yes, briefly. I was, yes.
Saw me cry in a lot of conference rooms.
Yes. Closed door, always.
Closed door, always.
You're very professional about your
I was
crying.
a really discreet crier. It was only, you could tell if my face was bright red and
yes,
things
leaving
like
the conference rooms was always, it was your tell
and
that you had been crying.
I wish I was the only one who cried in conference rooms at our company.
Oh, no. It was a kind of very punishing job for a lot of people. You were not the only person to cry.
So neither of us is there anymore.
No, we've moved on.
So, let's get into sort of what happened after you left our shared unnamed company.
Exactly. Let's leave it anonymous. So I moved.
If people did the slightest bit of research, they could find it. You don't care.
Don't find me on LinkedIn. So I moved from Chicago to New York to work for Bloomberg TV, and I worked there until I got a position as a producer at Jazeera America, where I worked as a live TV producer as well as handling some planning and longer-term projects until its closure last April.
Which was 100% your fault, right?
Oh, yes. Well, I did get there, and then 6 weeks later it was announced that we were closing. So I felt a little responsible.
That had to feel personal.
I think everyone took it personally. It was a very sarcastic newsroom for a few months, which actually was kind of fun in a producer kind of way.
Senioritis sort of deal, right?
I mean, no, we really worked hard until the end. We did, but it was a lot of frustration to say, "Oh, good, I'm here again today. Great, we're kind of, But it was fun. It was kind of like, well, you make friends with people when you're on a sinking ship together, right? They're like,
for sure,
yeah.
So you had about 3 months.
No, it was like 6 months.
No, I'm sorry. When they told you that it was closing.
Yep.
And what spiraling happened, I'm sure.
Yes.
Soul searching.
But yeah. And I decided, though, that I wasn't going to apply for any other network jobs. And instead, I was going to do what I've wanted to do for a long time, which is to freelance in the field. And so after our closure, And
this was, give me a time period for...
This was mid-April.
Mid-April.
Of last year,
Holy shit, it was a year ago already?
I know.
I remember
it's crazy.
Anne and I had a lot of G-Chat conversations about
we did.
hopes and dreams.
And crushed dreams. And feeling like it was the end. So
you decided to travel.
So I did, yeah. So I went to South America and reported from there. I first went to Brazil and then Colombia and Venezuela. And I was in Brazil. I wanted to start there because of the Rio Olympics. So I went to Rio. Yeah.
So what was that experience? Did you have specific goals that you're like, I want to go and this is the story I'm looking for? Were you just willing to... Was it a very hippie,
partially?
Story come to me?
No, I mean, there is an element where you can plan as much as you want and then you get there and oh, that's not the real story. I thought that Zika was actually going to be a story when I got there, and it wasn't. No. It really wasn't.
Turned into that douchebag swimmer. What's his name?
Oh my God, Ryan Lochte with the hair that he thought was blue but was really silver.
He was the worst, wasn't he?
Yeah, I saw him swim. He
is that okay?
His looks do not hurt.
No,
but
no, I think
he still just looked so dumb with that hair.
No,
he looked terrible.
Just sidebar, but is swimming that exciting to watch in person?
Yeah, it
was.
Is.
It exciting?
It actually was really exciting.
Like the theater of
because also you can see there's a set beginning and end, and there's no scoring, so it's not I mean, I would have loved to see gymnastics, but you're like, it's not out of 10, it's out of 16. I know it's been that way for many years, but I still can't keep track. So it actually was really fun. But yes, so while I was down there, I wanted to cover not the Olympics. I am not a sports reporter, but more the humanitarian issues and corruption issues in Brazil, because people would actually be paying attention.
Yeah. And I mean, were you looking to lock in that sort of Olympics story with the corruption? Because there's obviously corruption going on.
There was a lot. And there were also every Olympics has its challenge. Has its many challenges. But in Rio,
have been questionable choices.
Yes.
And questionable financial decisions.
Oh, yes. I think it was something like $60 million just went missing. in Brazil. I was like, oh, okay, well, there goes that. But the water was filthy.
Oh, I forgot about that.
What was it? It was like a kayaking team that ran into a couch.
No.
Like that actually happened. Yeah. I can't remember if it was, or like windsurfing. It was obviously some water-based surfing.
An Olympic sport?
I think it might be. Oh God, don't fact check me. This is not important.
I'm not the journalist
as a reporter
here.
to know the facts. No.
And so this was, we're recording this on March something. Oh, International, all right, International Women's Day.
Yes,
so
it is.
Cheers to International Women's Day.
That with our not wine.
No. This is
professional
water. Actually, I have done a podcast where I got hammered drunk, so this is not a strange thing. Anyway,
that's fine.
Let's talk about me more. So we were talking about the Olympics.
Yeah, so I was in Brazil, and it was a really interesting contrast, the favelas that were just filled with poverty and violence, and then 20 minutes away was Ipanema, which is just like such concentrated wealth and trendy restaurants and, people with Rolexes and just such wealth. And the disparity was really shocking.
You don't speak Portuguese, do you?
No, I don't. And I had this foolish idea that my very bad Spanish might translate a little. It did not, and I wasn't. Child. But I thought I could pick up a little bit, and I just was hopeless the whole time. So I had to make friends and use translators and everything. So.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So how do you? Okay, so you don't know any Portuguese. You don't know anybody in Rio.
Yeah.
So what do you just walk up to people like, "Hi, I'm American. Can I interview you?"
It starts with kind of quieter conversations. So you just start to talk to somebody about their experience.
Hope they speak English.
What they're but then also like what do you as a local see as the real issues here? So like what's the deal here? And then also walking around wealthy neighborhoods, a little dodgier neighborhoods, and I was doing Airbnb and I just stayed in like a different neighborhood with each booking, so I got to see more of the city. But then actually I met another reporter and he set me up with his translator.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that's how I got access to the favelas.
Because this was all
the red light district.
This was all self-funded, right? You didn't have the backing of any network or news outlet. You were just like taking my severance.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
If
I hadn't been laid off, I would never have been able to afford it, which is, kind of funny. But
it's definitely a bittersweet situation.
It's very bittersweet.
I can relate.
Yeah, I still miss it. So
so what surprised you the most?
I think it really was the level of wealth disparity, but how concentrated geographically it was. That, like I said, there was Ipanema and Copacabana and huge high-rise hotels, amazing restaurants, seaside, and then 20 minutes away on the bus, one of so many favelas.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. They're not even in Copacabana. You can walk to a favela. Basically, if you start to go uphill, you're going to end up in a favela.
And would you equate, so we both live in Chicago, would you equate it to like you can walk out of the Loop and into some really dodgy areas, or Gold Coast is like butted up against, Gold Coast used to be basically touching Cabrini Green.
Right.
Is it even more?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's much more stark. I mean, Chicago has many, many issues, and poverty and violence, obviously.
Ask Trump. Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, absolutely.
I made it 10 minutes without mentioning him.
Yeah. But the kind of poverty was way more extreme. People living in barely what you could consider houses, some without plumbing, mud as streets. And of course there's always, it's like cities within cities, even within the favelas, there are kind of better parts of it than others.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And that is interesting. It's like you can be on a dirt road with no plumbing and just really horrible conditions, and then kind of come out of a street and there are restaurants and there's a grocery store and there are people on bikes, and it's not all horrifying poverty, but the poverty there is very stark.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And I think there is something that you become a little bit accustomed to a certain level of poverty just based on kind of where you live. Like I lived in Uptown for 6 years, and
right.
There was, and we were right next door to I think it was just a mental health facility or something. Kitty corner.
Methadone clinics right there.
Kitty corner from a church where that served as a homeless shelter. And so you get pretty used to it. So it's almost hard to imagine that you go somewhere. I mean, which is so naive. Like even saying it out loud, like that's such a naive thing to say. But it's, I don't know.
Well, it is and it isn't though, because it's your experience and your surroundings. And yeah, living in uptown Chicago does come with real challenges. There's a lot of homelessness. There's a lot of mental health issues, a lot of drug addiction. And that is not to be underestimated. But yeah, I do find that, it still definitely is shocking when you go to a different country and see it, because it's also a totally different life and different lives that these people lead.
So you went down to Rio to just sort of kind of feel out what was going on there and in terms of the Olympics and what was going on with that. Was that what you ended up writing about and reporting on?
I wrote about the favelas and then I also wrote about the red light district in Rio. And that was an interesting experience. People were very distrusting of me, obviously, because I was a woman who was there who wasn't a sex worker. Yeah. And people saw me and they were,
couldn't place you? Couldn't categorize you, I mean?
Yeah. And as soon as I took my phone out to start to take pictures, which phones are so helpful because they're way more discreet, people started like waving me away. Oh. But I was able to talk to a few sex workers, and it was really incredible to see their lives and how they had come to be where they were. And it was a lot of drug addiction, but it was also these women had been completely tricked into getting there. And one woman had thought she was signing up to go work at a grocery store. And instead she was brought to the red light district.
And Jesus Christ. And where was she brought in? Was she Brazilian or was she
she was. So she was just brought from kind of a more rural area. And then on the first day she was there, they gave her cocaine and they just kept giving it to her until she was hooked. And then this is now her income and what a portion of it goes to. And then, of course, sends money home to her kids and her family. But that was interesting.
That's, I think, the most depressing thing I've ever heard of my entire,
it was, but the thing is, the women themselves were so upbeat. They were funny. They were smart. They were beautiful. They were these really incredible, spirited women in these horrible conditions. Yeah. And they were funny. I mean, the way they talked about their work was hilarious. Yeah. Because I wanted to go there also because of the Olympics and whether they would start to see people. And they're like, oh, yeah, we see people from France. We see them from the United States, people from Spain. You just learned a couple of words in different languages. They're like, oh, I'm practically fluent.
Oh, my God.
They were really
and they were
funny
okay talking to you?
Yeah, they were. They really wanted to share their stories. That's what I found is... it can be kind of hard to approach people in certain situations, but most people want to tell their stories.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a truth that makes what you do possible, because if people are too closed off, but people do, they want to talk and they want people to hear their experience, especially if they're in such a misunderstood or maligned industry like sex work that they didn't...
Yeah, they wanted their stories out there. They know that they're underrepresented.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're in Brazil for how long?
I was there for about 6 weeks, and then I went to Colombia.
Colombia.
Yeah.
How was that?
That was wonderful. Yeah. I absolutely fell in love with Colombia.
Really?
Yeah, it was beautiful. The people were really nice. Everything, it just felt very welcoming.
Your Spanish was more helpful.
Definitely. It was still minimal, but I could get around, ask for directions, order a meal without feeling like a total idiot.
And what were you after when you went to Colombia? So
this was the months preceding a peace deal between the FARC, the Colombian Armed Forces, the rebel group, and the government. And it had been 50 years in the making. And just kind of seeing what people felt. And I talked to some former child soldiers who had been involved. I mean, they were, again, the people who get into this, they're either raised... One girl who I met was raised in like a rebel supporting family. And so it was like a way of life for them. And so when she was 10, she signed up because her father had and his father had and all of this. And then another, and it was interesting to talk to them because a large part of why people were against the peace deal and ultimately voted against it, which was really shocking to me. But a big part of the reason why people were against it was because it basically gave some amnesty to these people in a certain respect, to the rebels. Mm-hmm. And being angry about that with people at the top, I understand. Mm-hmm. But can you really punish these people who are now in their 20s and mm-hmm. they were recruited when they were 10?
And they don't know anything else.
And yeah, and not only that, but they escaped. Both of these people had incredible escape stories. One guy had tricked his commander into letting him scope out a town that they were going to go to, and instead he ditched the person he was with, stole a car, and drove to Bogota. And as soon as he got there, he was captured again.
Jesus
and like, this person, is this who we want to put in prison? But I also understand, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people were killed mm-hmm. by this group over the last 50 years. So how can you, both sides really made sense to me. It was very complicated.
Well, I think that's always a really super compelling thing to talk about, because I think there's definitely parallels to, say, like gang violence and things like that here. Mm-hmm. Is like, when you look at it in the big picture, like, yeah, we need to address this, but it's not that simple. It's not a mass group. It's each person has a story as to why they got there. And it
absolutely
generally starts with a lack of education and a lack of resources growing up. Mm-hmm. And you do what you have to do to survive. And that's what you have to do.
Right. I mean, when they're being completely ignored by the government mm-hmm. and these rebels come to them, mm-hmm. this militant group, and they're the ones feeding them. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones getting them jobs and helping them build their homes. I mean, who is your allegiance going to be to?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Really quick, because my podcast is supposed to be about religion, I sometimes forget. Can you speak to, did you have so obviously Rio has the big Christ the Redeemer statue. Yeah. Is that reflective of how religious that city is on the ground, or is it more of a showpiece? Is that a dumb thing to say about
No, it's not. It's not. It's not dumb at all. In Rio is a really big city that stresses dance and culture and art and music. And so, no, I didn't find that to be pressing for most people. Yeah. I mean, they have this gigantic mega church, which is so bizarre to see. It's huge. It's the largest church I've ever seen.
Really? Did you go inside?
Yeah.
What does it look
I just
like
walked inside. It's like cone shaped kind of, and huge glass, stained glass windows, and it's just open to the public. I mean, it's fine to walk into,
sure.
But then it's a church that was built in like the 70s, so it's not like super exciting to look at the architecture.
Sure.
It's like, okay, this looks good. Took a little break from the heat and then walked back out. I mean,
oh my God.
But in Colombia, yes, the Catholicism there is way stronger. Mm-hmm. Lots of shrines, especially to Mary, and lots of, religious iconography, lots and lots of it. But I didn't experience a lot of zealots. It's more cultural.
Mm-hmm. Is there any delineation between, like, the rebel groups are more Catholic or less Catholic, or more this, more that, or is religion
not really?
Not a part of it?
I think it's just that the country is Catholic, basically.
Sure.
And people take that to whatever, extreme they want.
Isn't it interesting that, isn't there a study or something, God, I'm so glad I did research, about if a country has an official religion, the religiosity of people, it's not always reflected? Like, England has the national Church of England. Anglican. I'm so smart. But people...
Well, okay, if, like, the Queen is the head of it, I mean, come on.
But, like, on a whole, England is not very religious, whereas the U.S. is the U.S.
Yes, it sure is.
And our life is happening to us. Anyway, that was
I don't know about that study or those specifics, but that wouldn't totally surprise me.
May or may not have made up.
Fair enough. No fact checking, okay, guys?
No, yeah. If you want facts. No, that's not true. This is... Anyway,
we're good.
We're good. So we kind of talked about this off mic, and I know you don't want to get into your next project quite yet because you haven't been funded, but you originally were going to go to Mexico and do some journalism there. And then what happened? What kept
this
you here?
Thing in November followed
November
by
2016?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Something about that.
I was busy that day. I was blackout drunk.
I was busy the next day. That's for sure.
Oh, shit. You and I were texting all night, weren't we?
Quietly in despair. Yes. So, my next plan was going to be in Mexico. I was ready I was planning for this. And even as far as January, I was planning that. And then after inauguration, it did become clear that I never thought I would say this, but America is the front line now in terms of politics and globalism. So now I'm planning a more long-term reporting trip in the States, which is something I really didn't think I would do. This election really did change the course of my career.
Yeah. I think it's changed a course of
many people's lives.
People and things and lives and my personal depression.
Yes. Right. I mean, sure, my career has changed, but I'm reporting on people's lives who are directly affected or who caused this or whatever role they played.
Yeah. Well, we were having a conversation earlier about the whole middle market thing and that we underestimated them. And I get that to some extent. I do. Like, it's very clear that there was a voice that felt unheard. I am continually being more and more of the opinion that, like, people talk about the liberal bubble, and I know I'm not the first person. This isn't like a hot take, but people talk about, your liberal bubbles in New York and California. But, like, everybody I know who's liberal has, like, a diverse group of friends and experiences. And so I think to call that a bubble is kind of a misnomer. Whereas when I lived in Montana or lived in Indiana, I was, shocker, surrounded by white Christian people. And so there's a part of me, I don't know, I'm a generally empathetic person by nature. So there's a part of me who really wants to say, like, okay, these people felt like they weren't being heard. They felt like they were being left behind. But I just can't muster up sympathy. Do you think that makes me a bitch?
No, I don't. Okay. I think it is totally representative.
That's not
of
the reason
how,
I'm a bitch. There's other reasons.
No. Oh, no. I mean, you guys should hear her off mic. She's a terrible person.
Evan and I did a show that was like advice or whatever, and I prefaced everything with, like, you have to understand, I'm an asshole. So I'm going to tell you this from my asshole point, because these are all people, like, trying to do really delicate balances with their family. I'm like, no, fuck up. Like,
yeah. No, total jerk.
You're such a dick. I regret this interview. I don't. This is the best. I'm so happy to see you.
I know. I'm so happy to see you too.
I can't remember if we said it in this. I did fuck up our first draft of this.
Yes, we had a rough draft. We had a rehearsal.
And it was rough.
Yeah, I think we came back better.
No, I think so too. So the only reason I bring that up is to say that I can't remember if we said it then or now.
Oh, no.
But the last time you and I saw each other was for Hillary Clinton's.
Yes, it was
her primary win in New York, and we came over and we ate Indian food and we drank wine.
Yes, we did,
and cried through her speech. And like we were having like the most hand-holding women power evening. It was such a great evening.
It was so nice. It was wonderful.
West Side Story, I think.
Oh God, did we?
Yeah.
I mean, I love that.
Yeah, I mean,
so I wouldn't be surprised if we did watch that.
It jives with the thing we would do.
Yeah, it does. That seems like on track for us. Yes.
Yeah. And it's so funny how, and that was when was it, July-ish,
yeah.
And it's March now, and like how, God, holy shit, have we not seen each other in almost a year?
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, it's your fault.
I know. God, how dare I?
God, is this really interesting, guys? Yes. Anyway, again, all that's to say that, like, the world has changed in such a dramatic way.
It really has.
Since last you and I spoke, and the mood of everything is different, and do you feel hopeless? I feel I'm in a hopeless place right now.
It really varies day by day.
Yeah. Not hopeless. I think, and I say hopeless, like, in a very, like, personal, me dealing with it and my own, like, depression issues. It feels very hopeless. It's not that I don't think we'll ever get back on track. Just want to make that clear. I don't think that the country is literally going to burn to the ground. I don't think.
Don't think, though, is like, I never thought we would have to qualify that with, like, maybe, though.
But probably not.
But maybe. Yeah, I think what I try to focus on is, first of all, just as a journalist, obviously staying as up to date on everything as possible, and to go straight to the legislation.
How do you do it without going fucking bonkers? You don't do it?
I don't do it. I do it.
You drink wine?
My evenings are very full. No, but I find that while paying strict attention to that, and every piece of legislation that goes through, and going to the source, going to congress.gov and looking at every piece of legislation that comes through. That's where I'm most horrified. And every time
but
Trump
nothing's not horrifying.
tweets or says anything or lies, just outright lies, that's where I feel like, what is going on? But the thing that I try to focus on as something to keep me sane is Russia. Because this issue with Russia is not even close to done. It is not even close to unraveled. The government is leaking like crazy. And Trump pissed off the press and intelligence agencies. Those are the two groups that you should definitely not piss off.
Yeah, okay. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's a really interesting conversation to, so as somebody who's working in journalism right now, obviously it's not like you're part of the press corps, but there is certainly an element of both the president maligning the news or people saying CNN is fake news or like whatever kind of garbage they're saying. How does that change your job as a journalist?
There's a level of distrust that I haven't experienced before. And I mean, partially working for Al Jazeera in the States.
Sure.
I experienced a lot of people like, oh, interesting. Like, they should have changed the name. How did they not change the name?
Yeah.
But so I have experienced some of that, but a general distrust of mainstream media. And when did mainstream media become this bad thing? Like, people with a past and a dedicated, history of responsible reporting.
Right. And
this is now a bad thing.
Right. And degrees and experience. And I mean, I think we also, I think that we are living right now in sort of a time that is really reflexive of the last, I think, 10 years. And at the time it didn't feel like this, but the last 10 years have been increasingly a time where like knowledge is valued and education is valued. I think more than anything before, people generally are expected to go to college, whereas, 20 years ago that certainly wasn't the case. So I think this is sort of a what's this hand motion that I'm doing?
I'm not quite sure.
No, nobody knows. Like a reflex, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Ricochet keeps saying in my head, it's not it.
Yeah.
About
backlash.
Thank you, Anne.
There we go.
Two professional writers finally came up with a word. Who a backlash against, this person is, and to me it's so goddamn bonkers because what I feel like we're hearing are people who look at somebody like you, master's experienced journalism, anybody who's been in politics, who's done it for a long time. And yeah, of course there's dicks in Congress. Like there's so many.
Yes.
But that has gotten like lumped up into this, if you have experience, you are necessarily, and big quote fingers here, part of the system.
Right.
But we're seeing right now, you put somebody in who has no government experience and like,
why do you want this? Why do you want this kind of inexperience? I don't see how. Well, it's the same way that education now means elitism.
Oh, yeah.
And experience is now corruption. And, I don't want a president that doesn't know what they're doing. I want somebody who maybe is a lawyer, maybe has a background in both public and private service.
Maybe has read the Constitution
before. Maybe has
before.
International experience.
Yeah.
Maybe has domestic experience. And I'm sorry, I think I just described Hillary Clinton, but but so you want somebody with experience. I mean, this is like with any job, you want somebody with, it just is baffling to me. But I think that this is also part of the problem of people in middle America. And this is what my next project will partially explore, is that these people who are not educated and see people with undergraduate or graduate degrees as elite. These people not only don't have necessarily college degrees, but they have poor education systems that they've been entrenched in this whole time. And yet...
And a lack of critical thinking skills.
And I think it all comes back to education. And Republicans have been the ones who have been blocking responsible education. And this rabid base is a consequence of that.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also an element, because it's just kind of impossible to not link in people who are very religious with people who are less educated. And I know and I want to make it very clear, I understand that's by no means not every person to a T, but
of course,
the Bible Belt, which tends to be lower, less educated, also tends to be more religious. Middle America, same thing. And obviously I'm making very broad strokes, but like just for ease of conversation.
Sure.
And I think there's an element of when you go to church, and this is kind of a half-baked idea, so stop me if I sound like I'm going off the rails.
Absolutely.
When you grow up in a church, you go to church every Sunday and you listen to somebody who is teaching you morals or giving you guidance or whatever, but really speaks in broad strokes, really says, like, you need to be a better person in general, and doesn't say, like, these are 4 steps you can take. Again, very much generalization. But when you are raised listening to, like, one authoritarian figure... authoritarian, I think, is the key there. Yeah, and he knows better than us, and we don't need... They don't need, here are my 6 plans to fix your finances. It's
right.
Keep tithing and finance will come
keep
to you.
Keep tithing, yeah.
So I think there's an element of, if you grow up religious, there's more emotion tied into what you believe and what you follow. Whereas, like, I wasn't religious growing up. I don't know if you...
I was, yeah. I went to Catholic school until 8th grade.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, I was confirmed. I was an altar server of the year.
Whoa!
2002,
Whoa.
not
Sorry.
to brag.
I didn't realize I was in the presence of royalty.
Yeah, I handled candles pretty well.
Did you?
Yeah.
What does an altar server do?
You're there during the mass, and instead of being in the congregation, you're up on the altar wearing some robes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, you, like, help the priest. And honestly, for me,
just
it
really
was so... I know it is, right? No, but it was way more enjoyable because I had an activity.
Sure.
I had constant activities. I was like, okay, well, in 5 minutes, I've got to ring the bells. And then I've got to grab the wafers that, by the way, come in packages like an Oreo sleeve. They do. And just, you could snack on them in the rectory if you wanted. No, they taste like paper. I didn't want that. But yeah, it was just activity for me. And then, of course, I went to high school and was pretty rapidly like, I'm not so interested in this,
Are your folks, don't we know how to talk too much about your parents? Are they still Catholic?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's, it's Catholic in like a... Yes, we believe this. We were raised this way, but no, there's no like strictness.
Okay,
no Catholic kind of guilt. Well, that's just built in. If you go to Catholic school, it just comes for free.
Yeah, why were we just talking about guilt before?
I don't know.
Off mic, we said something about Catholic guilt.
I'm not sure.
Really interesting podcast.
Yeah.
So how do we get onto this? I said, So following things with your, believing things with your emotions as opposed to by facts. And
yes,
I wasn't raised with any kind of religion, so I mean, obviously you see the appeal. Everybody has seen a really amazing sermon or speech or whatever, and like you cannot help but be moved.
Yes.
But like,
or when you're in a time of desperation and just thinking, I mean, I found myself even after the election thinking, God, I almost wish I had like a spiritual life to just be able to at least think about or do. And then that obviously went out of my mind very quickly. But I understand the need for guidance. Yeah. I really do. And the problem is it comes from the same person every week in the same building every week, spouting the same morals every week and not giving you any sort of paths to actual change.
Yeah.
But what I mean, in terms of religion and just also the electorate, I mean, if you have lost your job and feel left behind by the country, by the economy, by education, by the liberal elite, if you feel like minorities are taking your jobs and immigrants are here to kill you and all of these things, how do you still elect this person? Because... All right, let me take a step back and say, how about the people who voted for Trump, who insist that they're not racist, who insist that they're not sexist, and that it's all about the economy and all of these things? Okay, if the left had a candidate who was that insane, I would have voted Republican. That's like, you have to think about the country.
And that's the thing I thought about.
That's part of your right.
So much of if the roles were reversed and if the person... And I would argue that some people thought Hillary was like how much false equivocation did we see between Trump and Hillary?
God,
like
constant.
the emails. fuck. Oh my God.
The emails.
I would say once a week I just have like, not a breakdown, but just like, are you kidding me? How did this happen?
The emails were a very convenient way to cover up that they just didn't want to vote for her.
No,
that's it.
And
so let's use any excuse we can.
And I think, and I might have talked about this on the podcast before, but the closer to the election we got, I shouldn't even say it, the entire time when the Bernie bros were at their full broing.
I'll accept that as a verb.
Thank you. It's the shit that was going on with Hillary started to feel really personal to me. Because the things that were said about Hillary could easily be applied to me or most of the people I know and like.
Oh, yes.
So when people say she's a bitch or she's cold, I'm not very cold. I'm obnoxious.
Yeah, she's cold. She doesn't speak well. She doesn't, she just can't be good enough. There was never a chance for her to be good enough. Right, she's bossy. She just, she's an insider. Like, oh my God, she did everything right.
Well, and she did everything right. She did anything she's the most qualified woman qualified person who's ever run for the office. And there was just something, I think my feminism in a real way like reared its ugly head in 2016. Yeah. Because I also think when I was young and naive before November.
I know. I didn't think I was naive.
No.
And then I was like, wow.
Yeah, super naive.
There was another layer that was
we're just on the couch,
not yet broken,
watching Hillary speak, crying into our wine. Happy days. Anyway, remember when we were optimistic?
Barely.
What I had said was, I'm actually glad that Trump is the front runner and that Pence is his lackey, because they aren't using, and they do use a lot of doublespeak and coded language, but they are just flat out saying the shit that like your Paul Ryans are saying a little more subtly. So
absolutely.
So in my head, I was like, okay, this is best case scenario. So November comes and goes, Hillary wins, R.I.P. And we can be like, hey, remember when you dicks said you weren't racist or sexist?
Yeah.
This is what it looks like. This is what misogyny looks like. And I think racism and misogyny always come back to, well, I don't call women cunts and I don't use the N-word, so I'm not racist or sexist. And it's not. That's not it.
That's not it. That's not it.
And we talked about this so much when we worked together, about like the weird shit that we would encounter. Like
just like easy sexism.
Like very, very
just like
covert.
Settled right into it.
And from our friends. That was the hardest thing. Like from people we worked with.
Right, like young people, young
liberal guys.
Right, who, I mean, there is something entrenched and you kind of have to always check yourself. And I think everybody should do that. But yeah, things where you're like, oh, you just said that.
Yeah.
And you're my friend.
And you think that's appropriate.
Or like, oh, you constantly talk over me in a meeting, and sorry,
I just know exactly what you're talking about.
No names. Never.
He or she would never listen to the podcast.
But yeah, I mean, just like these.
I
these
just panicked because one's Francis listened and one's Richard listened.
Oh God.
No.
Oh God.
Fuck. I'll cut all this part out. No, I don't know how to edit.
But yeah, these kind of really subtle aggressions where you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh my God, like you won't stop talking over me, or you didn't include me on this email chain, but I was heading up the project, or I carried out this significant project and the guys who helped me at the end then sent out an email saying, look what I did. That actually happened. I was like, oh, all right. I
mean, I got the you sound too aggressive talk.
Oh, yes, you did.
Yeah. I mean, and granted, again, huge asshole. And
no,
I do acknowledge
but you're not
that.
Actually, professionally. You're not.
I was very firm in what I was doing, and I was fucking sick of repeating
How dare
myself. You? Yeah. And when I was leaving my company, I called them out on that bullshit and said, if I had written those exact same emails and I was the guy, they wouldn't have brought that shit to you.
Really? See, I didn't know that. Your last days, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my exit interview was 90 minutes long.
Oh, you did tell me that your exit interview was a very serious
It was
exercising.
lengthy. Well,
truth.
it was definitely, for those of you guys who don't follow my life, which is the appropriate thing to be doing. I worked at a company for almost 4 years, and then they ended up eliminating my position under some pretty shady. Is this libel? Slander. Which one's which? You should know. Slander versus libel.
Slander.
One's spoken. Slander
Yeah.
is spoken. Slander. Mm-hmm. I'm not using their name. And there was an element of there were almost no women in in management or executive roles. I was one of the only. My boss, and I'll tell you off mic who it was. So my boss brought me out to dinner and said, "Do you think our company has a sexism problem?" And I was like, "Well, I will tell you that I have a mental drinking game every time I'm the only woman in a meeting, which is at least twice a day." And he was like, "Oh, I never realized that." I was like, "No fucking shit."
Well, yeah,
white guy.
I know. First of all, there was a time when you and I were the only women head of departments.
Oh my God,
Do you remember
right.
that? It was us and I think one other person in Boston, and that was it. And I was like, me? Like, I think I am doing a great job, but are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, there are so many other women who could be promoted to take this person's job. And the turnover rate was so high that it's not like there was a lack of opportunity.
Well, yeah, and that was a conversation, and I hope this isn't too inside baseball, but I feel like this probably applies to a lot of workplaces. And God, I hope nobody from our company listens. I don't care. I've said this to their face.
We're both gone.
Yeah, later. Actually, I'm not going to say this on mic because it's kind of a shit thing to say, so I'll talk to you about it later.
Okay. Fair enough.
But I will say there was an element of, we also worked with some incredible women. So smart and kind of after.
Really talented people, really motivated.
Yeah, and after you left, we kind of cultivated this sort of girl gang.
Yeah.
Of these.
Yeah, you told me
we
that.
would do a book club thing and just sort of talk about what it meant to deal with this bullshit. I mean, it's the same thing you hear over. Like, how many times can I hear, well, they told me I was going to get this promotion this time, and then they didn't.
Or I was supposed to get a raise, and now it's been 6 months.
And now it's been 6 months, and what am I supposed to do? And, of course, my answer is fucking tell. Like, what do you do? Why are you sitting in your desk right now? Like, I would be banging down their door and being like, hey, my dude, remember when you said this thing? Fucking follow through on it.
Yep.
Ugh.
And see, but we both were like that, but it was... People shouldn't have to do that.
I think, 100%, I think you hit the nail right on the head, because I've had this conversation with people where they're like, oh, well, you've gotten promotions and you've gotten raises. I'm like, I'm not worried about me.
No, I asked for raises and I asked for promotions.
Always. You and I were really similar in that sense.
Yeah.
But like, but we're both really A-type personalities, and like,
Or just like, I'm not going to deal with this.
Don't
have time. I'm not going to let you talk over this person.
My rent is due.
Yeah. I need a little more money here, and I am being paid less than this person.
Yeah.
Who happens to be a guy. No kidding.
Did I tell you this aforementioned person, when I got promoted over him, I was still getting paid less than him?
Yes, you did.
Drinking my wine?
Yeah. And this was not an exemplary employee. No.
So, okay, enough talking about our covert job. Let's get back. Oh, what I was going to say is, have you seen Get Out? This probably is.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to talk about that later, but it leads me to talk about white liberal racism.
Yes.
Which I think is a super interesting
It was also at our company, but...
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The worst. Actually, taking a step back from that, when we talk about white liberal racism, which inarguably is there, and it's well-meaning people not quite figuring their shit out enough, do you think there is... do you think we're distracted? Because there's overt racism. That's still very much alive and well in 2017. What do you think about... Because, I mean, I think liberals as a sort of rule do a lot of introspection. We do a lot of, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right words? Where, so when Trump wins, there's... How many think pieces did you read about what did liberals do wrong? How did we isolate middle America? Which I do not feel like... the right super did after, say, Obama won his second term. So all that's to say is I think liberals tend to be so like, what did I do wrong? Am I doing the right thing? Can I be better every single day? Which is, again, a shitty overstatement, because it's not like the GOP are necessarily bad people. But Do you think when we talk about, say, white liberal racism, do you think that's just, it's important because we should all be like as inclusive and everything as we can be? Or do you think that's kind of shining the light whereas it should be like, hey, guy who still thinks it's like appropriate to use the N-word, or guy who like thinks black people are necessarily criminals, or makes a black guy the head of housing and urban development because he's super qualified because he's a neurosurgeon.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's room for both. I think that there is no shortage of space in a paper, online. I think there's no shortage of space, and we need to be talking about all of it. Yeah, including white liberal racism. And if that includes introspection, I think that's great. And if that introspection doesn't pisses off people of color, then we need to talk about that too and say, okay, oh my God, I meant well and I'm still wrong. And not get defensive of our white liberalism. And say, well, I'm a liberal, so I mean well. Okay, that's great, but your words are still shitty. Your actions are the same. Or it's these passive things that feel passive to us, but feel absolutely aggressive and commonplace and just the same as any other brand of racism.
And I think that really hits close to home when I think about like sort of feminism and the feminist movement, because obviously it's something I can relate to. So this person we talked about before who's constantly talking over people and just being the most mediocre he could ever be. I'm such a bitch. But like, this guy is also the first one to like any feminist thing I put up on Facebook, is the first person to like make fun of mansplainers, quote, quote, quote. But like,
oh God, he did it constantly.
Always. And so
tried to mansplain Harry Potter to me.
Oh, you were so mad about that.
I forgot about that until right now.
That was 2 years ago.
I forgot about it until now. I must have blocked it out. But for everyone listening, do not question me on Harry Potter.
He did mansplain serial killers to me. I did not take that well.
Serial killers to Jessica.
Oh my God. I'm not going to post this to anybody who ever has met us. So anyway, there's just sort of a disconnect of people who mean well but do poorly.
Yes.
And that's hard because it's hard to be told, like, yeah, you're trying to do the right thing and you're failing. Like, that's not a nice thing to hear.
But
you have to.
You have, not only do you have to,
shit.
but like, okay, not only do I have to hear this, but I need to hear this.
Yeah.
And I've got to stop making excuses for myself or, whether it's about racism, sexism, xenophobia, any of these major issues, you need to be checking yourself. And if
Before you're wrecking yourself? So sorry. So sorry.
But if somebody from one of these groups tells you that what you said is offensive, you need to believe them. Because think about it, like as a woman, if a man says something like that's offensive and they get defensive, I just want to slap them.
Yeah.
So it's okay if white liberals are a little hurt at first, but then put it into action and rethink yourself.
I do think that's always what it's about, of if somebody tells you an experience in their life, you owe it to them to believe them.
Yes.
Especially if they are a minority of any stripe. And
absolutely.
I think there's just... And I think people get so strung up in their own bullshit and especially when it's... Again, it's about big picture versus small picture of like, oh, well... I'm a white, college-educated, person with... How come I'm not... I don't feel like I'm privileged. But it's hard to get a big picture, especially when you're young, especially when you don't have a ton of personal experience. And, not that we're, like, super old. But no, I think I got on a tangent there.
No, I think it's present everywhere. And I think that it also, privilege does run on a spectrum. We are white, liberal women who grew up in the Chicagoland area, went to universities, are able to
Had
do many things.
Who were involved in our lives.
Yeah. And so we have all these things, but we're still women. So there's this shit that we deal with that, of course, is a totally different experience than a woman of color. Absolutely. And that needs to be recognized 100%. But then, oh my God, Why am I paid less? Why do people make sexual comments about me at work? Why am I being constantly talked over? Why don't you believe me when I say somebody catcalled me? Really? Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Why do you doubt this? Or why do you insist that women are equal just because you think so? Okay, thanks.
I feel like I say this a lot, but I think it always comes down to empathy. If you are not willing to listen and like really listen to somebody's story or their experience, and it ties back to like the women you met in Rio of like, instead of saying like, oh, you brought this upon yourself, or you're a drug addict, so that means this about you.
Right.
And especially when, okay, I'm just going to do liberal rant all the way of like, we talk about like, oh, black teens are into drugs or whatever bullshit people are saying. But like, I'm sorry, you remember the 80s, right? Because everybody was like on cocaine, I think for the whole decade. But because they had already, it's just this infuriating.
No, it's hypocrisy. It's a lack of empathy.
Moving the goalpost is what it is.
Yeah, constantly. The goalpost is constantly moved. And I've experienced that at every job. And as a woman in journalism, too, I mean, talk about a boys' club. And so many of these men, super talented, smart, deserving of their jobs, whatever. But, you know, the teams that work in the morning news hours versus the evening news hours are very different.
Ooh, tell me everything. This sounds like really good gossip.
Okay. Well, I worked on a morning news show.
Like a morning zoo type when they did sound effects. And
no, seriously. Thank God. No.
It's so fun now.
Oh, there were some things I did where I was like, I'm a journalist. This is killing me. This is killing me. To do those kind of fluffy
like
pieces,
fluff,
but they rarely ran. But I was waking up at 3 a.m.
Eesh.
And I get there and I'm surrounded by women journalists. And isn't that cool? And then when I switched to evening hours to work on an evening news show, I was one of the only women in the newsroom. Those are great hours. You get to wake up at 10, get to have a little dinner there, go home.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it was really shocking. And I think I was somebody who was interesting to be able to see that because I worked both evening hours in a short period of time. I was switched to the evening. Thank God. I don't think I would have made it. Anybody who watches a morning news show, you have no idea how hard those people work and how exhausted they are constantly. It is totally bizarre to be commuting home at 11 a.m.
Oh my God. One of my best friends does teleprompting for WGN morning news.
Oh yeah.
And
I've run that prompter. That's a high stress job, honestly.
Yeah.
It seems really silly and whatever, but it's actually like,
she's really good at it too. But she's been dealing with it like, she gets home from work at noon.
Yeah, it's so strange. And you're like, don't take a nap. Don't take a nap. And in the summer, when the sun sets at 9:30 and I go to sleep at the sound of children playing outside.
Well, and I think that's such an amazing example of what are women... So, okay, so we see this... Right, so assuming, taking you at your word, I assume you're not lying to me.
No.
I'm gonna fact check. So taking you at your so saying there's a majority of women in the morning show versus the evening show, and the evening show's the cake gig. Mm-hmm. So there's how many ways this can happen? Are all of the men better at their jobs, and that's why they get it, or are men asking for it and women aren't, or is there an inherent assumption that the women are worse, or is there an inherent assumption that women are more willing to rearrange their entire life for this garbage hourly job thing? Not that it's a good... I mean, you had a great job, but you know what I mean? With
really
these garbage hours.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a little of everything, but I don't think it's that women don't ask for those hours.
Oh, really?
Because I have always been assigned to shows, and that's generally how it goes, because you get hired to work
to fill
at
a gap.
company.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hired to fill a gap, but it's really, really a tough world to work in TV, because they can't say, hey, somebody just quit on the morning show. We need somebody who's also a senior producer. Mm-hmm. And so that senior producer has to shift there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're women.
That's so nice of them.
So yeah, it's just really interesting. Or if a morning news show is a little sillier, that's often staffed by women, as if it's like, well, they understand kind of like silly
they can
women
do the fluff
humor
pieces.
and
I don't know, man.
And I mean, just like the wardrobe too, what these poor anchors have to wear, and they're freezing.
What do they wear?
Well, they wear, sleeveless dresses.
those
Actually,
dresses.
working at Al Jazeera was like, ooh, I'm kind of glad we're owned by a Middle Eastern country because they get to wear blazers. They got to wear pants, for God's sake. But no, at other networks, I mean, they're freezing. Studios are freezing.
Okay,
and these women in between, during commercials, will like put on jackets and then throw them off at the 30-second mark.
Well, and I think that's such a good point to bring up. So when we talk about like how does racism look, or excuse me, how does sexism look in 2017? It's a small thing that it's really easy to ignore if it doesn't apply to you. But
Yes.
I just got hired at a job that I have to wear business attire, which is not it's not a thing I'm emotionally prepared for.
No, it sucks.
It's going to be awful.
Yeah.
And that's not true. I'm very excited about this job. It's just something that I'm not
slacks.
ready for. But
Slacks?
like
I
men
don't
can own 2 or 3 suits, and my husband had to wear suits for 2 years. You own 2 or 3 suits and change out the shirts and ties, and whereas women are expected to like. Especially in your Fox News world, like you have to be revealing but not slutty.
Oh God, it's
and
so
you're
Fox.
sitting.
Oh.
Every time I watch, and it's not often, but every time I see clips from the Fox and Friends, when that girl is sitting on a fucking couch with no desk in front of her in a short skirt, I'm like, oh, sweetie, why? Like I
It's supposed
can't.
to be so uncomfortable. You can't rearrange your legs
at
They're all
all.
slicked up with some sort of oil. I mean, they're so
Ew.
shiny.
Yeah.
No, I haven't experienced that personally, but it looks like it, doesn't
You
it?
have
They're
very
so shiny
legs.
Oh, thank
Anne.
you.
Don't,
Thank you.
Don't say that about your legs, your dull legs. But just little things like that like women, or the joke that's been made a zillion times and isn't original anymore, but like, oh, this man spent 4 hours in makeup to do this role every time. And women
Right.
are like, yeah, that's just me, like, if you want to see my face, like I have
Yep.
to.
Yep. If you want to see my
And-
face and not be criticized, and women on TV, I mean, yeah, the guys go to makeup and it takes 5 minutes, and I mean that's part of just the appearance sake. But oh my God, could you imagine like watching these on-air reporters at 4 a.m. when I'm barely functional, and they have to sit in a chair and have somebody tug at their hair and put pounds of makeup on, and then
smile.
and smile, but also be intelligent and talk about
But not
real
too intelligent,
issues.
and you can't be too intelligent.
Oh, well, that's-
or you'll turn off men.
That's fair. That's fair. But I saw so many wonderful female reporters. Just, I mean, everywhere. I've been really lucky to work with a lot of great people, both men and women. But it's impressive.
Well, and you also take, dressing a certain way, having your hair a certain way, and in like off-camera context, people say, "Oh, well, nobody told them they had to wear makeup or do this or that and the other,"
Right.
until you start to read studies about like women who don't wear makeup. Women who
Right,
are
they're hired less, or women with straight hair are seen as more professional and tend to get jobs. You're like, well, that's sexist, that's racist, my God.
It's everything, and that's why I think I've just had this argument with so many people about it, and I feel like it always comes back to like, oh, it's all in your head. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, this is the way
you're
you're
playing the
interpreting
victim,
it.
and that's and like anti-feminist women, quote fingers. Oh God, fuck them. Fuck them the most of all. But when they say I choose not to be the victim, I do understand what they're trying to say, but that's not.
I just feel like it's saying,
not
I
helpful.
choose not to care that I have to work so much harder to get less. I choose
Or when
to not be bothered, or I choose to ignore our reality.
Or I choose to ignore the generations of women who came before me who
Yes.
fought tooth and nail,
Yes.
so I could have this right to have a job, or like wear pants in public, which there were riots over.
I wear skirts twice a year. I just
bought 2 skirts. I'm real nervous about it. I'm not a skirt gal.
get some tights. It makes everything better.
I bought everything.
Oh, yeah.
All the tights. But yeah, I mean, I guess in conclusion, fuck everything. I don't know. Like that's all. Anytime I talk to anybody or talk to Hemet, I just feel like shit. I feel
No.
No,
But also, I
it's-
understand that.
it's and looking at those pictures of Trump surrounded, like his cabinet is almost
constantly.
all white men.
Yeah.
And
anytime he signs a bill, anytime no.
Oh, and the shit with the traditionally black colleges and universities.
Oh my God, so disrespectful.
So, and like the Kellyanne Conway thing was garbage, but like the fact that they came in for a specific reason, they came in to be heard and to speak to the president, and they were lied to,
and now they just have a smiling picture,
and they were a fucking prop
yes.
for this photo opportunity. So Trump can say like, see, I have more than 2 black friends.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's a total nightmare. It's a circus, and it's terrifying, and I think we can't allow it to be normal.
Yeah.
And honestly, the thing that's keeping me sane is you look at the news every day, you study what's going on, you look at the legislation itself. You, if you're a private citizen, you call your representatives, you make yourself feel like you are really doing something, and you are. I just think that all of this lying and all of these distractions, I think we should actually pay attention to the way they're trying to distract us.
Do you think, okay.
Because he made the Russia story bigger by then accusing President Obama of wiretapping. Which, like, well, you just made it bigger.
Shit,
I mean, that's an insane lie. The lies are absolutely insane, but what he managed to do was make the story bigger. And thank you very much. Because now you're encouraging Congress to look into it even further.
Well, and that's a question I've always had is like, is Trump an evil genius or is he a fucking buffoon?
I honestly don't know sometimes.
I don't know. With absolute sincerity, I don't know. So like when he's tweeting about SNL or whatever, is he really trying to distract us from something? Because that's, you see a lot of thought pieces, right? About like what the Trump tweets are really distracting you from. Yeah. And those aren't wrong. There's a lot of bogus shit that's being passed right now.
Lots of diversion.
But is that Trump being like a mastermind, or is that Trump being a child and like,
I think he's kind of utilizing easy tactics that he's used before in business, where it's easy to kind of, fake left, or in this case, fake right, I suppose. But
I had wine in my mouth. I wanted to make that joke so hard, and I
stole it. Perfect. So I think that there's definitely some diversion tactics that can be easily applied, but it's not brilliant. Like, he made the Russia story bigger.
Yeah.
He's inviting criticism constantly, but the problem is that his base takes him seriously.
I'd say that's one problem. I would say the larger problem is that the House and Congress are putting party over country.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a thing that I've said this a million times, history is not going to treat these men kindly.
No.
It's not going to be, because when you look back, and Trump, I think, really foolishly linked what he is accusing President Obama of to Watergate, which is fucking bonkers.
He's already walking around the White House at night like Nixon, just like staring at paintings in his robe. Yeah. Oh my God.
I don't know much about Nixon.
Oh yeah, he completely lost it and was like talking to himself and walking around at night. Which Trump is already doing, and it was like 2 weeks in when that report first came out.
But linking to Watergate, because the difference there is the people who were investigating it were of Nixon's own party. It wasn't like the opposition was jumping on it. It was people who were putting their government, putting their country over their bullshit party allegiances. And now we're just seeing like these fucking limp-dicked, spineless bastards in the GOP who are just a puddle for him and will do anything he says. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for every single person involved.
I completely agree. And it's like, okay, senator is one thing.
Yeah.
Congressperson is another. Is this the level of power you're tripping over? Every 2 years, you have to win your job back. Yeah. This is the level of power that you're willing to sell out your country for? You're a congressperson. You are one of 435 people. Most people don't know your name. You're trying to make a name for yourself by supporting this president just so you can keep this amount of power?
Oh, that's an interesting point. I would have thought the opposite of, like, you're a senator, like, maybe take your shit seriously for a minute.
Senator different. Senator is different. Senator every 6 years.
No, but that's what I'm saying is, like, I would say that, like, we should be saying, like, really to a senator who's, like, really, you have so much responsibility on your plate, and this is. But that makes sense that there's not. Yeah, fuck, man. Yeah, everything's the worst.
But you know what? If there's so much about party and being reelected, if congressional investigations, which are happening, go forward and begin to expose a very dark truth about the election, well, they'll switch right over.
What do you...
And then all Democrats will have to do is air an ad with their face and the last time they supported Trump in a date.
I don't know.
Well, I know, me either, but this is something
Because
I tell myself at night.
The thing is, like, the 2016 elections were like, there were... I mean, I was... And I've heard this from a lot of other people who are in my sort of group, like, emotionally... I don't know what that means. But like other white liberals.
Yes.
Like youngish liberal people who election day, I wore a fucking red blazer to work and was like this. I invited people over to I invited my friend over and his husband to like watch the results, and I was drinking wine. And at one point, oh my God, bless my poor husband's heart, because he was just like sitting on the couch. It was like 10 p.m. He wanted to be in bed already. And I was on my hands and knees in front of the TV yelling, no, 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 no. And just got slugging wine like it was I was inconsolable. Why did I bring that
Stunned.
up? Is it because I just want to talk
We just
about
need
myself?
to talk through it.
Yeah, you do kind of. But all that's to say, like, leading up to the election, I was so fucking cocky because Trump didn't do a single thing right. You know?
Right. It was like, okay, people see this though, right?
Yeah, like
people
we're all
this.
watching the same dickbag, right?
We were very wrong. And embarrassingly, well, no, it was a little embarrassing. That night, I was watching with my sister, and we were in this apartment. And my wonderful,
apartment,
brilliant sister, Ellen, just started getting quiet a lot earlier than I did. And I feel so dumb that like I was still texting people. I was like, it's a little closer than I want it to be.
Oh God.
But it's still okay. We're still waiting on and looking back on it, I had friends who were like, oh, I knew at like 8. I'm like, I was holding on till 10:30.
Oh my God.
I can't believe it.
I have looked back at texts that I sent and probably
so
to you if I'm being honest.
I think we were texting and then there went
furiously. Radio silent. But I was like literally like 9. I was like, I'm just still concerned that Trump isn't going to concede. Like what fucking haughty assholes we were.
I know.
But
it's also because we believed in sense, and that, again, I think from our perspective as people in cities, white, educated, we were like, the country can't be this ugly.
Empathetic.
Can't be this
friends
ugly.
With people of different ethnicities. Yeah.
And we were
Humans.
totally wrong.
So wrong.
The country is uglier than we thought it was.
Oh God, it was like a slap in the face. So what do you think in the next few years? Do you think there's going to be an immediate backlash from Trump, or do you think we are going to be in the trenches for a little bit regarding
backlash from Trump? What do you mean? So
say 2020 or in 2018 rolls around, and do we think that because I mean, there's definitely been talk of like the one silver lining to the Trump nightmare is that more young people are like, oh shit, I need to get involved, or more liberals are like, oh okay, just because all of the people I know are at least reason. And honestly, the reason I was so fucking cocky about a Hillary victory is that most of the conservatives in my family voted for Hillary.
Interesting.
The people, and that's why I was so goddamn cocky. My mother-in-law, my folks, I really don't know my mom's political opinions, but my dad for certain has voted conservative since the 70s. And my mother-in-law, and they're both like, no, this guy's a fucking
right. So you saw common sense prevailing.
And I thought
among
that's
people
what would
who
carry the day.
Opposed to the left agenda. And so you're like, okay. No, I understand that. And I felt the same way. So the next few years, I mean, I think that it's going to be a huge fight, and that they're going to be legislation passed that are, I mean, really detrimental and really scary.
That's the thing.
But you've got to fight. I mean, it's our country. I've never... My patriotism has been both killed and then revived again, because this is my country. I can't...
Yeah, and I have a lot of respect. Like people like Lin-Manuel Miranda, the day after the election, people were saying like, "Oh, are you gonna move to Canada?" He's like, "No, we have shit to do here." Like,
I love him.
Oh my God, could I love him more?
I don't think so.
Did you see Hamilton?
No, I wasn't able to see it.
And it's so good.
Listen, I lived in New York, and every single day I lived there without seeing Hamilton, I felt like a failure. So the whole time I was there, I was just like, oh, I haven't seen it yet. But tickets were insane. Yes,
well, I saw it on a matinee on a Wednesday, and it's only because my aunt has like early. This is not interesting. Anyway,
hook me up.
It's
because I just
awesome. It's so good.
No, you know what? Honestly, when I was planning out my next project.
Mm-hmm. You were like,
I'm very, very secretive about it. But I was listening to the Hamilton soundtrack and I was like, no.
No what?
No, like I do not accept. I do not accept this. I will not let this go by, and I also will not give up. And also, if Lin-Manuel Miranda can create this epic piece over 6 years, and it really is about the founding of our country, no, and it just was inspiring. So, if you're listening, Lin-Manuel Miranda,
what if he listened? What would I even do?
I don't know. I'd probably cry for many days.
Oh my God.
Just he's so earnest.
He's
constantly
so earnest and kind and wonderful. And he's a big fan of a podcast. I'm a big fan of my brother and me. And
you talked to me about that.
Anytime he's on TV, he like does a little like signal to people who listen to it. He's just like a fucking doll. And I want to hang out with him. And he did karaoke with at like a Bim Bam meet. My brother I'm sorry, I'm just really excited because you're going to understand why I'm so excited.
Okay.
He went to New York. He lives in New York, as one is wont to do when they're living in Miranda. He went to my brother and me meetup, and he karaoke'd. And guess what? He karaoke'd.
I don't know at all.
Ignition remix.
Oh my gosh! Okay, Jessica and I worked together, and every single Friday, she would send me...
Okay, so we had some technical difficulties exactly as we were both yelling into the microphone.
Yes, we were.
So there was no way to pretend we could cut it in and act like I know what I'm doing at all.
Oh, you do.
I mean, Hemet gives me all this equipment and it's like, oh my God, a wing and a prayer that I can make sounds work.
It's a setup. It's a setup.
Finish your thought vis-a-vis.
Oh, you? Yes. Okay.
Because it's dumb.
Okay, no, it's wonderful. Jessica and I worked together for a few years, and every single Friday, she would G-chat me a link to Chicago's own R. Kelly's Ignition remix.
It's just
like, welcome to the weekend.
It was my official Friday song.
It was, and she took it very seriously.
It really did.
It did.
Because it was a symbol. It was a transition. And also we did start drinking in her company at like 4 o'clock.
We did, yeah. We did.
And the problem was like once I was a manager, I would play it out loud in the office.
Oh yeah, you had run on that place.
But there would still be people trying to get their shit done. And I was like, sorry, guys.
Listen, you're not getting away to my Friday.
This is Jessica's time. Okay.
Exactly.
Anyway, so that was a dumb anecdote about how I'm the worst to work with.
No, wonderful.
We did have so much fun together.
Yes, we really did.
We used to, we're just going to reminisce at this point. Because if somebody's made it fucking an hour and 15 minutes into this, we used to have garbage time.
Oh, yeah.
So if we would book
we just used to book conference rooms.
Oh, yeah, we did
and
do
make
that.
up titles for them, and we would just have lunch together.
Well, but
let's not parse it. That's what we were doing.
Well, no, more often it was like, I booked this conference room for an hour, and the meeting lasted 20 minutes. Like,
do you want to come join me? Like,
it's garbage time.
I'm on my way and bring my laptop.
Yeah. It was good times. I feel like it's hard to really marry that story that we just told to the fact that women didn't do well at our company.
You're like, well, yeah, they were always in conference rooms having lunch. Like, nobody ever knew, though.
To be fair, all of our male coworkers were on Facebook just all day.
It's fine. Oh, yeah, come on. It's modern office.
Modern office. Okay. So I guess we have to wrap this up because it's been going on for 17 hours.
Whoops.
Yep. So, Anne.
Yes.
If my listeners, for whatever reason, have listened to this whole thing.
Thank you. I'm impressed.
I have the hardest time recording with my friends because I just
it's dedication.
I mean, I just lose all professionalism and I forget. Like, I'm going to listen to this in 30 years and be like, Jessica, you're a fucking idiot. Like,
I don't think so.
Stop yelling for a second. Anyway, so Anne.
Yes.
Friendly Atheist listeners want to find out more about you or read any of your pieces. Do you have a website?
I do.
Okay.
You can find me at annebouleanu.com.
Go ahead and spell that.
I'm gonna. ANNEBOULEANU.com. I didn't change my name as a journalist because I forgot.
Did you
I put out my first piece and I was like, ooh, I really
shit.
made that choice. Okay. All right.
Wait.
I could have got my middle name.
What's your...
Hudson.
Oh.
No, it would have been great, right? But I didn't,
That is the whitest white girl name I've ever heard.
Exactly. Anne Bouleanu, it's like, where's she from?
Is that French?
America. Exactly. People always think it's French. It's Romanian. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a Romanian family.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we talked about that. Okay. And thank you for doing this with
Thank
me.
you so much, Jess.
This was, I mean, we've had to do this like 4 different times because I was deathly sick the first time we were going to do it.
Yes, yeah.
And then I fucked up twice.
It's just all in the name of the podcast, guys. She's so dedicated.
I'm really like to showcase my friends who are incredibly talented.
Thank you so much.
And super cool. And good luck on your next project, Anne.
Thank you. It's been so wonderful to have me on. Can we just cut? Thanks, Jess.
No. It's been so wonderful to have.
It's been wonderful to be here.
Oh, there it is.
Is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome, Anne. You guys, you can... she's dead. She's gone. You guys can always find us at friendlyatheistpodcast.com. I think we sell shirts and shit. You can, if you want to buy my dumb cross stitches, they're at Bitches Get Stitched Done.
They're good.
On Etsy. Oh, thanks, boo-boo. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. I love doing this, and bye.